Good evening, everybody. Welcome to MCon Live, and we're at the beach for our Death in Paradise special with the wonderful Ben Miller and Danny John-Jules. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Hi.
Oh, lovely to be here. Yeah.
Welcome,
Danny. You definitely look like you're dressed for the beach.
I'm in character. I'm in the bar.
This is the spin-off series.
Yes.
So, we're just here tonight to talk about Death in Paradise, which you were both stars on for many years. So, we just want to talk a bit about your time on the show, your fond memories, and just kind of have a bit of a chit-chat.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
We had a lot of fun memories.
Yeah, it looked it on screen. The chemistry on screen, you guys looked amazing.
Well, the first series was like a revelation in any filming I've ever done. So, you know, I'd never really prepared to do a TV show before. But as Ben will tell you, the first day we got there, we started jogging on the beach because, you know, we realised that this was not going to be no walk in the park. So, you know, Ben will confirm that we started jogging as soon as we got off the airplane, because as soon as you got into the airport, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was just you just was in this bubble of humidity, you know.
Yeah, I think I arrived. I don't know if you arrived on the same flight, Danny, but the flight I arrived, I just remember there was a lot of athletes, a lot of Guadeloupean athletes arriving at the same time. And as we came out of the, as the passengers came out off the plane, there was this enormous sort of uproar went up.
Yeah.
You know, the whole place was rammed and sort of people shouting and everything. And you just feel like, I don't know where I am. And it's the heat that hits you. And there hadn't been, you know, the people that I think we just all really underestimated how difficult it would be. Is that right, Danny? Do you know what I mean?
It was like watching. You remember watching the Mexico World Cup and all the players dropping over, you know, with heat exhaust, and everyone's at home shouting out, "Get up, you big wussy!" You know. And, you know, we used to scream that at the telly all the time. You know, oh, it's a bit of heat. You know, Barry McGuigan losing his world championship. You know, in the middle of the California desert fighting a Hispanic guy, you know, and him sort of collapsing after about 3 rounds, you know. Get up, you wussy, get up. As soon as you got into the airport, you just went back and took back every word.
Yeah.
Did you get much time to acclimatise to it all or anything like that? Because, Ben, you were in a suit a lot of the time.
I was... I think we had about 2 weeks, Danny. Did we get there about 2 weeks before filming started? Something like that. Because the idea was we were going to settle in, and but you know, I couldn't cope with the heat. I pretty quickly figured out I couldn't cope with the heat, and I was wearing, as you say, a wool suit. And you know, Danny will bear witness to this. I basically would run from I put the air conditioning on full in one of the cars. I would sit as close as I could to set in the car with the air conditioning on full, then run onto set, do as much as I could before I went completely crazy, and then run off again.
So they weren't tailor-made suits or anything like that to breathe or anything?
Well, you know, the fact is that Ben, the problem why Ben was worse than us was because he doesn't sweat. That's what, you know, we were already at sort of, you know, CPR levels, and Ben hadn't even started sweating yet. So you can imagine he was internally combusting. Right?
It's true.
We were just like exhausted.
See, that's just shine. That's not sweat there.
So where we were at critical, he hadn't started really getting hot yet. So when we were, and then he'd start getting hot. But
we mustn't forget how amazing the place was to arrive at. You know, there's 2 main islands in Guadeloupe. There's one island. I mean, there's a whole bunch of islands, really, but two large ones. And they always say they're shaped like the wings of a butterfly. And one of them is geologically old and flat and has the kind of classic white sand beaches. And that's the sort of where the main port is and where the tourist area is. And then the other island where we were is volcanic. It's much more recent geologically. It's got a rainforest and it's got a ribbon of beach that runs around it. And some of those beaches are some of the most incredible beaches you will ever see in your life. But when we first went there was nobody there. There was no tourists. There was no nothing. Tourists just didn't go to that island, although it had the most incredible beaches. And around the place we filmed, Day A, it's breathtakingly beautiful, isn't it, Danny? I mean,
it is. It's amazing. It's just this little place in the middle of nowhere, and it's now become this mecca. For tourists. It's so weird to think about it now when we walk down that main street, the first series, and there was literally just people peeling their potatoes and stuff at the front door, and then all of a sudden about 100 English people turned up. Wow. When I got there, you got to remember the crew had already been there for about 6 weeks before we got there. By the time I got there, the lighting crew looked like the Temptations. I mean, they were lying down on sunbeds, man. All I could hear was, opening doors, picking up your hanky. It was like all those guys were hysterical. They'd already acclimatized. It was mad.
There's a lovely picture of you all in one of the villas.
That's Chris Marshall diving off of the bar into the pool.
Is that his villa?
No, that was a party, in fact, and he's diving from a bar into the swimming pool. I mean, but that's the kind of thing when you get to that point where you're so hot, people just start diving into water. It's a relief. People in fully clothed, they'll be at a party, and all of a sudden you hear "Pudush," and someone's just got hot and dived in the water.
Danny, can I ask you, one of the things that really surprised me about the show is it has a very particular tone. It's got these kind of, it's got these murder mysteries, but it's also got it's a tone that's very, it's got the island as well, which makes it look very unusual. There's nowhere quite like where we film. There's no question about it, isn't it? It's very, very unusual.
It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like any other Caribbean island.
No.
And I think that's why I think logistically was one of the best things in the show, because most people have been to the Caribbean, and when you look at the telly, you go, that ain't Jamaica. So but with this, it was a fictional island and no one had ever seen this landscape before. I think everybody sort of bought into it because of that.
Can I ask you, Danny, when did you realize we were in a comedy?
Well, the funny thing is it was never a comedy. I never saw the word comedy in any paperwork to do with this show. At no time did that. I don't know about you, but it was never mentioned when I was talking to anybody about the show. Nobody mentioned comedy.
I think they got the balance right, though, between the murder mystery whodunit and the comedy side, and the relationships that your characters had. I think the balance works really well, and I think that's why it still keeps going.
I think one of the reasons it really works in hindsight, and it's not easy to spot these things to begin with, is that every character in it has their own story, and the community that the characters have is one you just want to visit again. It's kind of, the characters have their challenges and they have their difficulties. Like, life is not plain sailing for them. Exactly. But they live in a beautiful place.
I think, and I think that's why I think all the characters in it were torn in their own individual way. They were very complex.
Danny, how can you say we weren't in a comedy? Look at that.
Yeah, but the thing was that, Ben, at no time was that written into the script like that. It didn't say you had a George Formby crash helmet on, But if you remember, that came up during the conversation, that obviously you would have George Formby crash helmet on if you were in a motorbike, because George Formby is the detective, isn't he? Let's face it.
Yeah.
He could have played that in the 30s, couldn't he? He could have been playing this part. That would have been George Formby.
But I think the comedy works because it isn't overly comical in a way. It's something that would happen to those characters. It felt so natural as well. You were the fish out of water. You were in that, and it worked so well.
George Formby allegedly was a comedian, but he was the #1 box office film star in England for years. And not only that, he was also the #1 pop star, but apparently he was a comedian. Work that one out. And his wife was his manager. Who could write that?
Who could write it?
I think that the comedy part, I think, just came with the different actors. I think they were all funny in their own way. I mean, Sarah is very funny, but she's not funny gag ha ha. She's got that Parisian thing. It's got that Gerard Depardieu funny about it. You know, it's kind of really subtle and lots of nuances with facial expressions. And whereas that's where Sarah's got. Gary's comedy was in, you know, his character trying to please so many masters, you know, which is never going to work out. You know, he was something to the chief. He was something else to Dwayne. He was something else to, you know, Sarah's character. So basically, he was just like a pendulum or pinball machine, just dinging around, you know, trying to be friends with everybody. And that made him funny.
That's worth mentioning, isn't it? Is that you know, it's very odd, these things. We're all cast, you know, we don't really meet each other until the read through before we're all due to go. You know, I mean, I first met Danny at the read, you know, at the read through. We're reading it for, you know, the channel and
all the heads,
all the crew, all the heads of the department, everybody's there. One thing I do really remember was how, given it was quite hard to, I mean, logistically, it was quite hard to do. You know, we were filming all on location. We didn't have any studio stuff at all. We were, you know, it was a bit of a learning curve in terms of the filming. But in terms of the performing, how we all gelled, Danny, that was amazing, wasn't it? There was like never even any discussion between us. Oh, you'll do this and I'll do that. We all just slotted in.
It was definitely, I think it drove the directors and the producers mad, but most of the creativity happened on the day. And of course, you know what that means. It's time against the arts. You know, the artists want to, you know, get it right, and the producers want to get it quick. You're obviously going to have this crazy, you know, crossing of cultures there. So, for instance, I'll give one example. If you remember that scene, there was a scene where we were at Dwayne's table, and I started with the juggling ball as we was doing I was doing my words and the juggling ball, and then Gary snatched it and then continued juggling it while he did his line. And then you came, snatched it, started to juggle it, and dropped it on the table. But that all happened on the day during the rehearsal, you know. So, and then Gary took it even one step further, and as he did his last line, and I told the joke, he threw the ball and it hit me on the back of the head while I was drinking the coffee. So, you know, of course, you know, Keith Boakes was going crazy because, you know, he's sweating like a whatever. He's looking at his watch, and there's 3 numpties working out some gag with a juggling ball. But if you look at the scene, it's seamless. It's so seamless. It is like 3 guys juggling. But that's going to take up 15 minutes of his rehearsal time. So that was the kind of scene, but that was every day.
It did just work. I remember, in terms of the tone of it, I remember there was a very funny day. I was like, my character always just loved getting cups of tea wherever he came. And there's this bit where he decides to go to this. He skips off, you know, he skips off work and goes to this nice restaurant on the beachfront. Right, I think it's right at the beginning of the show, and he asks for a cup of tea. The cup of tea arrives. We were filming that bit, and everything on Death in Paradise, there's no effects. You know, there's no everything is done for real. So while I'm having my cup of tea, over on the other side of the bay, right up on the top of the building up there, they are going to throw the bride's body, you know, the dummy, off the top of the the top of the building.
That's
and I'm
right. Yeah.
It's all going to be done in.
It was off the top of the veranda, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, and at this point, I said, like, this is like we've only been there a week or a couple of weeks or something. This is the first episode, and I'm sort of trying to figure out what's the tone of this. And at the time we did the show, things like The Wire were very popular. Wallander,
that's right.
You know, all very sort of
all very big, macho, high energy American.
Yeah. Stuff. And I remember doing this thing. I'm having this cup of tea. So I'm drinking this cup of tea, and I look over, and there's no rehearsal for this. I'm doing the cup of thing, and somebody's not going to talk. Okay, throw her off, and I expect the body to come off the top of the building, and it's this. It's like a tailor's dummy dressed in a white. It's like so
Hammer House of Horror.
Like, yeah, it's almost like a sort of, a kind of a blow up doll dressed in a, dressed in a wedding dress, thrown off the top. There's no sort of, doesn't do anything, does it? Doesn't bend in any way that looks natural. Just falls like a plank in a wedding dress to the ground. And I said to the producer, that doesn't look very natural. I don't think anyone's going to see that that's a body. And he said, no, that's deliberate. Yeah, we don't want it to look like a body. And then I thought, I really don't understand what show.
I'm expecting a close-up of Peter Cushing going.
Yeah. I was expecting, something scary, but it's got... The producers were always very sure of the tone. Tony Jordan, and...
I think...
And Robert, who wrote it,
we always had to go with...
They knew what they were doing,
Well, you had to go with what he saw, basically.
Maybe that
was daunting for anyone. So the best thing to do in that scenario was just absolutely, because we didn't really know what was going to come after the edit. We had no idea. But all we had to go in with was the characters. And we were lucky enough to have, well structured characters that we could just ride those in. And that's basically what we did. We didn't really know what the show would look like, what it would sound like. All we knew is that it's hot. We got a lot of words. And you got two choices. You got tonic water or rum. And that was it, man.
Yeah. No, but the tone came across. The chemistry between you guys came through on screen really, really well. As that everything felt natural, it felt realistic, and so you really believed these characters existed. And because of the world as well, no one knew what the island was going to be like, so you got to see that kind of reality. You believed it was a small town, a small island, and it was really believable. And it really held really well. Just in regards to your characters,
I think another thing was because we've seen 10,000 series of murder mysteries going back to the day film was invented. They did horrors and murder mysteries, so it's nothing new. The thing about Death in Paradise is that nobody had seen it in that context. I mean, yes, you've got Death on the Nile, but again, it's a boatload of English people sort of doing what they do at home just on the Nile. So with this, it was just doing what they normally do, but in the Caribbean with an Englishman, a French woman, and a couple of local Caribbean lads. That rings for a different feel altogether, because not everyone's from Newcastle or from the Cotswolds or wherever this place is thing is set, like the Midsummer Murders. You've got the world has come to this little town in the middle of the Caribbean, so sparks will fly.
Yeah. And the writing was so well done. I think out of all the episodes I've watched, I think I've only guessed like one or two killers, because they're so unique and so original stories. The writing team were behind it.
Actually, because I used to run a thing on Twitter, and what used to annoy me was every time we did a show, everybody you bumped into the following week said, I knew it was them. I knew they'd done it. And it used to get on my nerves so much that what I used to do was I used to run a competition every week. And I would say, I will retweet anyone who gives me, who committed the crime, means, motive, and opportunity, and murderer. If everyone can give me that, If anybody can give me that, a name who is going to be a name who's responsible for the crime, I will I'll give you a huge retweet. No one ever got it. No one ever got. They would get. I mean, there's only usually like 4 or 5 people who could have done it. So sometimes by luck, someone would say, "Oh, I think it might be them, but I don't really know why." And you think, well,
yeah,
that doesn't.
No, I used to get this is the one that I used to get, right? I used to get the ones that would come say, "Yeah, it's too many murders in one place and this and that," and then you go to them. So did you know who did it? And they go, "Well, that's not the point, They hadn't even watched it, They kind of didn't know. They don't even know who did it. But again, I used to watch the show. Every time I'd watch it, the first broadcast, but I would watch it and scroll through the tweets while I was watching it. So I would get the live tweets from the people watching it at the time. And to a man, by the end of the show, they'd all changed their mind about the killer about 10 times. Yeah. They'd start by going, "Yeah, it's Johnny. Yeah, it's Johnny. It's got that look in his eye. It's Johnny." And then 5 minutes later, I knew it was that guy, something. And this would happen all night, but from 10,000 people all at once changing their mind down Twitter. Yeah. So it was one of those Marmite shows that people sort of like, they wanted to hate, but couldn't help but follow it. And
we have to give credit, though, to Robert Thorogood, who came up with the idea, and Tony Jordan, who produced it. I mean, it was very, very, the thing is, not only is it really well written, it was really well directed and produced as well. You don't usually get everything like that. Usually you get 1 or 2 things right, and often in shows something goes off the rails, production or whatever. But it was what I was really impressed by was the lengths that they went to get the show right. So, for example, we shot. I don't know if you remember, Danny, but the first episode is a bit of a setup episode because it sort of sets up Sarah's character, and it sort of misleads you a bit. Sort of misleads you a bit about who the team are going to be, without giving too much away.
I had a big complaint on my Twitter about that one because I thought I thought that person was a person for the whole cast.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I didn't guess it at all. So
what they don't also really technically, Ben, is right. People keep calling you the first detective, which you are not.
I'm not. I'm the second.
You're the second detective. The first one got murdered.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here. You're here to solve the crime of the first detective. So, a lot of people, I think 90% of the people call you the first detective. So this is on the record, everybody. Ben is actually the second detective.
Definitely the second. Yeah. Taking place of Charlie. Played by Hugo Spear, right?
Hugo Spear.
Yeah.
He actually played scenes.
But we shot and reshot that first episode. I mean, we shot additional scenes for it. At least we kept circling round during production and shooting more scenes for that first episode and doing reshoots, shooting more and more. They really they risked a lot, the producers, to make sure that we got that very first episode right, because that's a very tricky episode to. You've got the tone right. There's a lot of different stuff going on. You're setting up one character, but it's a bit of a red herring, and I think as well.
I think they had the right producer. I think they had the right producer.
Yeah.
Absolute lunatic.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I think he's the only guy that could have produced that first series.
Yeah.
I don't think, you think about it for a second, Ben. Put a really nice chap in that role. When we were doing those first 2 episodes, just think about the madness. Only Matthew could have survived that. And he nearly broke his leg. Remember, he did half of it with his leg in plaster.
Well, look, Sarah did. Sarah did do her leg. She didn't break her leg, but she did. Do you know
her Achilles tendon?
Sarah did her Achilles tendon. And most of the second half of we haven't really got into it. We talked a little bit about the heat, but there was such a lot of stuff going on. So there were hurricanes and hurricane damage. Sarah had
a leading lady got flown out, in the middle of the series.
Yeah, leading lady. We had to fly straight back. She arrived and she had a bereavement in the family. Had to fly straight
Another
back.
actress had to learn the part on the airplane over.
We had
rewrote the entire episode.
You remember
and,
Keith the Grip, who got sick on the boat, had to go to hospital. We had all sorts go on. But one of the main things was Sarah had this very bad accident, slipped and severed her Achilles tendon, so couldn't walk for about the second half of the series when we were filming. And so she had a body double who stood in. I mean, amazing girl.
The way they shot around it.
Anytime you see Sarah in the show, it's pretty much always, if she's not sitting down and it's her face, it's her body double. And that
I didn't notice that at all.
A lot.
She did half the show. She did half of the series with her leg in a plaster as well.
Yeah.
So,
the producer had his leg in plaster.
The producer and the leading lady were walking around with their legs in plaster. So, and the writers are constantly rewriting the show, and all this is going on in one hotel. And it's got, then add another 100 Englishmen who are just at the bar, what they call a BBC beer.
Yeah,
that's what people used to say. What's a BBC beer? I go cheap. And so for the English crew, they used to give us like cheaper beer, so everyone called it BBC beer. So that's what they drank, BBC beer.
And
it was just how they got through it was just a miracle.
Yeah, it was mad. It was great fun.
One of the things I did love about the show is that usually every crime show you see, you have a big guest star every week, and usually that's the one who did the murder. And that wasn't the case in this show, which was really relieved and brand new to have. But you work with so many guest stars in this show. Some of the names that are actually showing up with you guys.
It's not.
Is there one that you worked with that you had a really good time with, or is there one that you thought, my God, I can't believe they're actually doing this with us?
Well, for me, it was Stephanie Beacham.
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Unbelievable. I mean, Dynasty, everything else, and you have a very fixed idea of what she's going to be like, and she was so game, so fun.
She was so funny.
Yeah.
You're expecting this diva to come in. And, the first thing she did at I bumped into at the reception. And the first thing, she introduced me to her boyfriend, who was a Red Door fan.
Yeah.
It's like, what? What? And he was a doctor. A really nice guy. I mean, you wouldn't believe it.
He's a nice man, Bernie.
Very nice guy. And so it was a gobsmacker. As soon as I saw her, I nearly fell over.
That's the other thing, actually. Anybody who came out to do the show usually brought people with them, because I mean, if you're, what it's like,
having a holiday.
Yeah, your partner says, "Oh, I'm going to go filming in Manchester next week. Do you want to come?" You probably say, "Do you know what? I'm fine for that." They say, "I'm going to go filming in the Caribbean."
Yeah, come on.
I mean, we all had lots of,
It was always family fights
out as well, right? Yeah,
family fights to see who gets the extra ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, it was extraordinary that, people would just be, lounging around, and you'd work out after 3 days that it's the partner of so-and-so or the friend of so-and-so. You probably sort of see them for 3 days, not realizing they're part of the unit,
Yeah.
But it's really a nice vibe on site, though, having everyone around, more of a family atmosphere.
I mean, Stephanie Beacham, this is a typical, Stephanie Beacham moment was, I remember, because we all had our names on the back of our chairs like real TV stars, right? And so she walked onto set and she looked at all the names and she says, "Oh, they all seem to be taken." And then, so there was one that had no name on it. And so what she did, she walked over, she got a bit of chalk and she drew a star on it.
Hey, there she is. Look at that.
Hey.
Oh, wow. God, she was brilliant.
Funny. She was hysterical. She was.
But no, some of the names on the show are amazing. And some of the small parts, some of the like A-list names you have now, and they're playing the guy who's in it for 2 minutes and then dies. So people must have loved the show to want to be in part of it.
They love the show. I think, to be honest, it was once the show was, because after the first series it became popular, so then of course it was easier to get people to be in it. But one of the great things about being the person who gets murdered, and I say this from experience,
it's true.
It's like a 2-week holiday actually, because you've got your murder scene, that's a morning or an afternoon. You've got your flashbacks, that's another morning or an afternoon. The rest of the time, you've got to be on call, because the chances are they won't shoot your flashbacks because they're tiny little scenes. They won't shoot those until they're sure they've got the main scene of the day. So basically, they get you to go out for the whole length of the shoot so that they can call you in whenever they think they've got a spare moment.
They want.
You're basically just sitting on a sunlounger for 2 weeks. So I think word got round quickly among the acting community that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was no shame at all in being the person who got murdered.
Yeah, people in the audition room say, "I'll die first. It's fine."
Yeah, it's fine.
Listen, it's the one job an actor wants to die in the first reel. You knew you was a star, as they say in The Harder They Come, the Jamaican film. And there's a guy in the cinema sort of going, "Oh my God, he's trapped." He says, "Be relaxed, man. Star can't die till the last reel."
Yeah.
So speaking of your untimely demise in the show, Ben, was it happy how that was resolved for yourself? I know you wanted to leave, so was it where you liked for him to go?
Well, I mean, it's not. The thing is that it's not nice to be murdered. However you feel about the story, actually being murdered on screen is not very pleasant. I've been murdered a couple of times in things, and it's spooky. It's a spooky thing. People treat you in a weird way when you're getting murdered in something. People don't want to look you in the eye. They don't want to hang out with you. They don't want to.
It's like your last day. It's like your last day on set, isn't it?
It is. It
happened to me in Blade. No one talked to me that day.
Yeah.
I like that they honoured go in the tank and die underwater. No one spoke to you.
No, I like that they honoured the character though. That he still solved the case as well as
Yeah.
It's very fitting.
No, it was a great. It was a great ending. I thought it was great. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, it would. It's hard. It's very hard to move on from shows. It's hard to move on shows, especially when they're really good, and especially when they do really well. But it is one of those things. I think you have to do for the show as much as for you. Because I did feel that leaving would also give the show the best chance of continuing to flourish as well. But it's hard, you feel, and then you're watching the show and you're not in it anymore and you feel, oh God, it's really fun out there.
So, look at this. So how many of your own stunts did you do?
Well, I never do my own stunts. I insist on not doing my own stunts. Danny, you probably...
That was one, I think that was my sort of second or third day. Again, it wasn't a case, there was no stunt man. My first real plunge was off of that hole.
You dived in? Forgot about that.
I had to dive in. I dived in. Yeah, there was no stunt man or anything.
There was no, usually you see, you wouldn't do things like that on.
Yeah, but fools set. Like me did.
You dived right off the deck.
I dived in my pants.
Yeah.
You dived quite a lot of places in the series.
Again, it was just we were literally working hand to mouth. It was, there's the scene. This is what we have to do.
Yeah.
We could do it, or we can wait, another week to get a stunt man. I'm thinking, well, we should dive off the board side of this whole, and get the scene done, innit? I mean, it was just like everyone just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
No, it's serious. I'm
laughing because it's true.
Yeah. The producers will tell you, man. Everybody just wants to get home because it's not easy, and you got to remember it's high octane, and pretty much anything can happen any day because you've got 100 people all sort of under desert conditions. I mean, you think 100 men right, in an army in the Second World War, all bogged down in some desert somewhere, you know, sitting around just doing the menial work. You think those guys are going to be singing, you know, Morris dancing, mate? They're going to be at each other's throats, you know. It's the heat.
It wasn't just desert as well. Sometimes monsoon. I remember there was like towards the end when hurricane season started, because we were also, you know, green really about how it was going to be when hurricane season started. And, you know, we were just we actually ended up putting it in the second series, that we were all just sort of saying, you know, it's a bit of rain, you know, grow up, a bit of rain, it's fine, hurricane. Anyway, so hurricane season arrived. Do you remember this, Danny? We were filming down the beach. We were filming this place, I think it was called the Tiki Lounges or Lodges, or we were right on the beach there. And there's only really one road on Guadeloupe, and it just goes, you know, around the edge
around the island.
And the mountains in the middle. And about lunchtime, the locals started, so they were all sort of talking and pointing at the top of the mountain. And then we became aware during the afternoon that they were all leaving, getting in the car, driving home.
They were pointing up, saying about 20 minutes. They were going, about 20 minutes.
What's going on? They said, and they were all going, in about 20 minutes. You see, it's raining up there.
Yeah.
In about 20 minutes, that's going to come down the hills. And then this is going to be, a river. Chaos down. It's going to be a river. And if we don't go now, we're not going to get home across the bridge to the other islands. So we were like, all very British about it, saying, you know, it's a bit of rain. I think we'll be fine. Literally 20 minutes later, this river of water comes down, picks up the grip truck, washes it down the road towards the sea.
Don't you remember holding on to the easy ups in the car park, and there's a river coming down on concrete.
So great,
crazy,
so funny. I remember seeing a chicken floating past in the middle of the road.
And that would be in the middle of a filming day, sort of every other sort of week.
That's the hurricane episode that we then based on what happened. We did that in series 2. We sort of based on what happened in that. Well, I say we didn't write it, obviously, but I mean it was based on our experiences.
But there was a lot of hurricane experiences. And,
Isn't that great?
I just love that briefcase. You never put that briefcase down.
Yeah.
As you know, one day you'd be in what would be desert conditions. The following day, you know, you need, you know, scuba gear, you know, because it was just rain.
So did the weather like enhance your performance at all because you knew you had to get out because of the heat, or did you ever incorporate it into your work? Or did you plan in advance?
It's one of those things. It's sort of Sod's law of filming, that whenever you have to always be pretending that the weather is whatever it isn't at that time. So what the main scenes we used to have trouble with are the ones in the police station, where at that time, you know, we left those scenes because that set was being built. That we didn't shoot those scenes until it was getting really into summer, and it was like 40 odd degrees, and back in the day, because this is 10 years ago now, huge lighting rigs. It's so hot in there, wasn't it, Danny? It was like a joke. It was like 50.
There was two swing opening sort of patio doors, but wooden slats, and normally that would be a draft coming through those, but instead of a draft, Ken would have two big 18K lamps coming through those windows into the room, which was made of wood. So you know when the sun hits wood, you know what happens. The heat comes inwards first before it tries to get out.
You can't see it. But there you are. You can't see it in the photo. You can't see it. Nobody can see it on screen. There's no point acting it when we're there. We never acted hot, particularly, did we? No,
and you never looked hot, sweaty, or anything like that.
Because it was
occasionally in your suit, but the rest of the time you didn't look like you were dripping with sweat like you expect everyone to be when you're over there.
Yeah, the odd gag about wearing a suit, but you know, mostly we weren't playing the heat, if you know what I mean. We were just kind of just trying to. I mean, I used to just have trouble just remembering who I was in that sort of heat, really. Let alone what
that again. I mean, you know, again, which was because it was so experimental in a way. Every single department when they got to set in the morning, had to throw away what they wrote last night. I mean, I would say every department. And if anybody tells me different, they're lying. Right? When in that first series, whatever was last night, forget it. Because the next day, every department would have to change what they thought they were doing that day in the morning. And so the scene would get jiggled around. The way he shoots it would get jiggled around. The way they would lit it would get jiggled around because they've changed the way they're shooting it. And so all that would happen every morning. And so of course with the heat. And so everybody had to sort of be on point pretty much.
Well, Danny, they would say there's a hurricane coming in, go back to your room, just stay there.
Wait until we call you.
Come out again.
So
but when you got to set, you had to be, cracking straight away. There was no time to have like 5 takes to get warmed up. They wanted it in the can on take 1.
Yeah,
because of the time.
Something ridiculous could happen, and it often did. We'd often not be hardly be able to film during a day because of it. In Guadeloupe in the summer, it rains really heavily at lunchtime. It's a very odd, like clockwork. The sky's open around about midday, and if you're lucky, it's just an hour. If you're unlucky, it can go on 2 or 3 hours, and you lose nearly a whole day.
Do you remember the first denouement in the school, and we were there. It took us 2.5 days to shoot the denouement.
Yeah,
and do you know now we do that in a day.
Yeah,
we do the denouement in a day. In the first series, it took 2.5 days. Wow. And if you remember, your first denouement, if I'm not mistaken, was 15 pages or more.
Yeah.
Right, and I remember, we were literally your takes were 20 minutes long.
Yeah,
your takes were 20 minutes long. Right.
Yeah.
And we had to do reactions to 20 pages. So no, but don't forget when they turned around, you were still doing those 20 pages.
Yeah,
and we were doing 20 pages of reactions. So we'd been there for about nearly 3 days. We were just in our reaction positions like this, sort of just swaying like this is page 10. And we were still there waiting for the reaction on page 17. I have a reaction on 17, and by 13 you're already swaying, and it was like I've got a reaction on 17, and by then it's all gone furry, and 17 comes and all you hear is
that's it, yeah. People would always fall asleep. That's so good. That's so great. That's on Replay. That's on Replay Beach, right? Or maybe Grand Anse, I think. Yeah.
Look at that.
Beautiful.
But that was what it was like every day.
Yeah, that's what it's the colours there that I just.
It's just amazing, isn't it? It really is paradise.
It's so
It hits the marker for that perfectly.
Yeah, and it's all that jungle that's just beyond the beach is just magical, really. Yeah.
One of the questions.
Do you think we should wind it up? Is there a can we take questions, or how does it work now? What's the
they're just going to get some up for us. One of the ones we've been
get some questions about
was about the Harry the Lizard and those scenes you had with Harry the Lizard. So did you have much improvisation with that at all? Was it, how did you work? Because it was CGI, wasn't it? A lot of the time.
I couldn't possibly say. I think
it's a very well trained lizard.
Yeah, a very, very well trained lizard. Look, it was a great thing. What are you going to do with that character in that hut on his own? It was a great device to move the story on, and also to make Richard, because Richard's hard work. Let's face it, that character is hard work, and it gives you a little bit of sympathy to his character, I think, as well.
Yeah, a little window into his personality. That he's not just he's a bit lonely, but he's got that friendly tendencies inside of him.
Very clever device, I think.
Okay, one question we've had: is there a favourite scene that you had working with Danny? And Danny, did you have a favourite scene working with Ben?
Well, my favourite scene was really the simplest. It was the most classic sort of, comedy cut, which was the fact that we only had one car in the station, and it had already gone. So, and it was that one, right, I'm off, car's gone. And then Ben's character's right, I'm off as well, but hold on. Yeah, but she's already gone in the car. Yeah, but how are we going to get there? And he did that smile, and then it cuts to the Wallace and Gromit shot.
Yeah.
Right? So, but what happened was, I don't know if Ben even knows this, that the motorcycle was only ever in episode 1. It was never written in any other episode. It was literally in episode 1. And apparently, after the Wallace and Gromit shot, word came down from the BBC that the bike then became a regular feature because of that funny scene. And all it was, you know, the George Formby helmet and that. I mean, it was classic old British comedy.
It was wonderful. Do you know what, Ashley? I'm a very nervous passenger. That's what you need to know about me. I'm an extremely nervous passenger. And I've had the good fortune, the 2 bits of speed stuff I've ever had to do. One is in the Johnny English films with Rowan Atkinson, and Rowan is the most fantastic driver. Does all
he is.
Yeah, he's a petrol head, isn't he?
Danny John-Jules is the most brilliant motorcyclist. He's probably never mentioned it before. He's so experienced on a motorbike. I mean, I would not have got in that thing with anyone other than Danny. But Danny, he rode so well. We were always pushing it, but never out of control. It was beautifully done. And that gave me, I felt safe enough to be able to really play the scenes and really enjoy them. And after that, Danny and I kept saying, well, maybe we can go on. Maybe we
go on the bike. Yeah, go on the bike. The thing about it was you know, I had to convince Ben that, you know, obviously we've got no stuntman here. There's no stunt coordinator, and there's just you know, and Ben admittedly just said that, you know, he was a nervous passenger. Now we're gonna go hacking around this little village in the Caribbean on a bike and sidecar with no seatbelts, no stunt coordinators, nothing. So, you know, it took Ben commitment to his character to get in that thing, because I was ripping down, you know, the high street, and Ben played it. We went through a 2-foot puddle about 15 feet, and I went through it. You can see how fast I'm going because the waves cascaded away, and Ben was and played it all the way through to the very end, when there was that look when you look down at your jacket and it's got that muddy water splashes on it, and you played it all the way until the cut. That look down at the jacket as if to say, well, that's been ruined then, you know. But that was the scene, I think, that bore the bike and sidecar forever, printed in Dwayne's character.
So wonderful.
Cool. We've got our last couple of questions now for you guys. We've got one from a Stephen Portman. He's asking, what was your favourite episode to film?
Well, I think the first one was because, again, I think that everybody was creating as they went along, and so I think whatever department you're in, I think that's the most exciting work that one could possibly do.
Yeah, and after that, I loved the hurricane episode that we did in the second series. I just think it was very. I loved the fact that we were starting to the writers and everybody involved was starting to use the experiences we were having actually being there.
That's right.
Incorporating those into the stories. It's something that we all used to talk about, which was, you know, we came out here with one idea of what this place is like, but now that we get to know it, and we know we should use the stories that are here and weave those into the series. And that's what's one of the things that's happened, and I think has really kept the show fresh, really. It's the real Caribbean is also influencing the stories.
Yeah, and also it's funny when you go to The Hague to see how 10 years of the British has influenced them.
Yeah,
more so. More so. You know, they get all those little slang words that they use now that we used. We used to, you know, obviously everybody tells the English the swear words. So we always learnt the swear words and they learnt our swear words. So, you know, they've got probably a whole different language down there now. It's 10 years.
Yeah, amazing.
That's another question we had.
One more. I'm going to have to split, I'm afraid.
The last one was always about the island itself. Is there a favourite part that you enjoyed of the island? Did you explore much of the island yourself? You mentioned that the rainforest bits.
Aquamat. I love the waterfalls at Aquamat. It is really quite extraordinary. There's a waterfall that falls into this plunge pool that is
like going back in time to like BC business.
I think the first series, for me, it was a lot about the ocean and the beaches. And the second season I was there, it was about the rivers, discovering the rivers in Guadeloupe. There's the most amazing rivers in the jungle that you can swim in with sort of these amazing plunge pools. There's a place called, I think it's called Trois Rivières in the jungle where rivers meet in this huge basin and you can swim. Oh, it's just magical. But I would quickly mention Lake Sainte, which is a little group of islands. Unfortunately, I don't know how they're getting on now because they got battered by the hurricane. But that was one of the jewels of Guadeloupe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here this evening for MCon Live. Thank you to Ben Miller and Danny John-Jules and everyone who's watched us this evening. And
there you go, Ben. Nice to see you, mate.
Cheers, Danny. I haven't got.
I say, at least we weren't eating spaghetti bolognese this time and playing guitars, right? Me and Ben did a posh karaoke at the 100 Club one time. So Ben came over. He just lived up the road, and he came over with his guitar so we could learn "Say Say Say" by Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. And then, so there's Ben sitting at my kitchen table, strumming away at this guitar, and then. All of a sudden, he'd let go of the tuning hand, grab a spoonful of spaghetti bolognese, and then carry on rehearsing. And then we'd hop down to the 100 Club, and like half the club was full of an orchestra. There was like literally the stage and an orchestra, and me and Ben singing "Say Say Say."
It was fun, right?
It was crazy.
It's such a great thing this show brought everyone together. You still got great friendships.
All right, Ben.
So pleasure very much.
See you soon, man.
God bless.
Everyone else, I will catch you all tomorrow night for an interview with Power Rangers actor David Yost, and follow us on Twitter and our YouTube page. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you all soon.